Karen Magana. How many of you have ever heard of the glass ceiling? Not a literal glass ceiling, but the glass ceiling. It represents the barrier that women and other minorities face when it comes to moving ahead, both in their professional lives and just in the general workplace. Historically, we've seen that there's a disparity in the way that men and women are treated, for example, when it came to property ownership, voting rights, and wages. But the overarching problem persists today, particularly in business. Like I mentioned earlier, this problem does not only include women. There are a variety of groups that are being left behind. Today, 37 of the Fortune 500 companies are led by female CEOs, and believe it or not, this 7.4% statistic is a record high. When we look at the Fortune Global 500 companies, only 13 of them are led by women, and none of these women are women of color. One way businesses try to mitigate this problem and close the gap in opportunity is by implementing diversity strategies. Diversity in the workplace involves the variation of employee background when it comes to things like age, race, gender, ability, and education. Now, diversity strategies can take many forms, including diversity trainings and longer recruitment processes. Slowly, however, we're finding that putting our focus on diversity is not enough. The key here is what culture the business chooses to cultivate after implementing their diversity practices. We may see a more diverse workforce, but this does not mean that the employees feel included and involved in the company and by their coworkers. I am the Chief Inclusion Officer of a student organization at my university, and this is a problem we've been battling this past year. We want to be able to represent a wider variety of students, but because historically we haven't implemented inclusive practices, students don't feel like it is a space they can belong. So typically they are weary of joining our organization. Differently from diversity, inclusion focuses on the lived experiences of employees and how those experiences can be valued and welcomed at the company. Diversity and inclusion are not one and the same. So how can businesses better close the gap in opportunity? Embrace inclusion. Why should you embrace inclusion? Decrease turnover. When employees feel that they belong at their company, their organizational commitment increases. They become more engaged not only in their job duties, but in the overall company culture. When employees feel left behind and excluded, the opposite is true. Think of an instance where you felt like you didn't belong. It's hard to want to remain in that situation, right? Now imagine, or maybe you don't have to imagine, that this consumes 40 hours of your week. Millennials and Gen Z generation are the most diverse in history, and millennials in particular drive the market today. So it's more important now than ever that we realize the importance of inclusive practices and what their impacts are on retention and turnover. What is another reason you should embrace inclusion? Increase creativity. Research shows that diverse teams actually make higher quality decisions, and 70% of diverse companies are in a better position to capture new markets. Not to mention, diverse management increases revenue by approximately 19%. When PepsiCo first started implementing their diversity and inclusive practices, 1% of their 8% growth came from the products inspired by these efforts. Without these efforts, we wouldn't have guacamole Doritos or the variety of wasabi flavored snacks that PepsiCo has to offer. While a diverse set of employees brings value and creativity to a business, if a business wants these results to be long-lasting, it is essential that they make their employees feel valued and welcome at the company. What is the most important reason why you should embrace inclusion? Promote equity. Now, let's define what equity is. It is the fair and impartial treatment of individuals. 3 of 5 U.S. employees say that they have either witnessed or experienced discrimination in the workplace based on the following: race, age, gender, and sexual orientation. Now, the key here is intentionality. When a business promotes an inclusive culture, things like this are mitigated. Providing protections for minorities so they feel included and welcome both legally and culturally will make all the difference. You can't have diversity without inclusion, and you definitely can't have inclusion without equity. Let's review. Why should you embrace inclusion? Inclusion decreases turnover, increases creativity, and promotes equity. Embrace inclusion. Thank you.